Hello, my name is Matthew Diller, and I have the honor of being the co-chair of the New York City Bar's Council on the Profession, along with Melissa Colomb-Basselet, and thank you all for joining us here for today's program. And as summer begins to turn to fall, sometimes in the evenings you can catch a wisp of that. Everyone in our nation, I think, is really focused on the challenges facing higher education, education generally, from pre-K all the way through higher education in our country, as we are all educational institutions come to grips with the pandemic and the challenge of how can we provide education in an environment that is safe and protects the health of all of our students, teachers, and staff. And so this is a challenge faced on all levels. And of course, there's legal dimensions in terms of its impact on legal education and on the way that we in our nation educate and prepare new lawyers to enter the profession. And so the idea behind today's program is to offer the perspectives and provide a conversation with 6 deans of law schools, along with the president of the association, Sheila Boston, who will moderate, to find out about how law schools are dealing with the pandemic, both for the upcoming semester, which is really upon us as schools are starting right now, and also to think about the long-term, the medium and long-term implications of how the changes and the techniques that are being developed today will impact legal education into the future. I guess I will confess that I myself am Dean of Fordham Law School, so I do have a particular interest in this subject. But today we have on our panel deans of small law schools, big law schools, urban law schools, rural law schools, public law schools, private law schools, suburban law schools. It really runs the gamut of the great law schools in our region. And so I think I'll just, Sheila, shall I introduce our panelists, or will you do that?
I'll do that if I may, sir.
Great.
Thank you
Great.
so much.
Thank you.
I am so thankful to Dean Diller and Melissa and the whole Council on the Profession. They've been doing a wonderful job assisting the New York City Bar. Also, I just want to say good afternoon and happy Wednesday to all of my New York City Bar family. I think you're used to me by now. You know, I was a cheerleader back in high school. I confess it and I claim it. So I get excited and I have a lot of energy, and I just hope that everybody is healthy and safe and doing well and finding joy. Yes, even in these times. So we have a very important discussion. And so without further ado, I would love to introduce our panelists. It's going to be very, very short. Let me tell you now, you can look them up. Each one of them, stellar credentials and just awesome. And I'm excited to have them with us here today. So I think I'm just going to go alphabetically by school, starting with Cardozo, the Benjamin N. Cardozo School of Law at Yeshiva. Melanie B. Leslie is the Dean and Samuel Belkin Professor of Law. And I want to share with you a fun fact. Before she went to law school, are you ready for this? She was the lead singer in a pop band for 5 years. They were based in New York and toured internationally. That is Dean Leslie. And while I'm focusing on you for a hot second, if you'd unmute yourself, Dean Leslie, and just share, I just love for people to get to know people and understand why they do what they do. So very quickly, can you just tell us, why did you become a law school dean?
I was lucky to be able to serve for a year as vice dean under Matthew Diller, who was here with us. And so I got enough close look at what it was like to work collaboratively with teams and to try to build an institution. And I kind of fell in love with it. And I thought, if I like being a vice dean, which everyone refers to as the worst job in the world, I would probably like being a dean better. So it just kind of evolved in that way.
Sounds good. Thank you for sharing. Next, we have from Columbia Law School, and I'm sorry, I'm just a tad bit partial. It is my alma mater, so forgive me, but next on the roster is the one and only Dean Jillian Lester, Dean and the Lucy G. Moses Professor of Law at Columbia. And her fun fact is she once appeared on TV. Guess what as? she was on a taco commercial. I just think that's kind of neat and exciting. All right, Dean Lester, you're up. Can you explain to us how it is or why it is you chose to become the Dean of Columbia? Oh, we need you to unmute.
So I became a dean by accident initially. The dean, my dear friend Christopher Edley at Berkeley Law School, where I was on the faculty for a decade, became ill and asked somebody on the faculty to step in and just manage the ship, and that was me. So I did it as a, just as a act of course, I would never not take this on when asked to do this piece of service. And then, once I started doing it, I realized how rewarding the work was, particularly being able to sort of do the work to, sorry, I
still hear you.
Do the work to facilitate people's ability to be the best version of themselves, both students and faculty.
That's beautiful. All right, well, thank you and welcome. Next, from Cornell Law School, upstate New York, we have the one and only Alan R. Tesler, Dean and Professor of Law, Eduardo M., and I'm gonna try to pronounce this correctly, and I love to roll my R's and I love to roll the N's, but forgive me if I mispronounce it. Eduardo M. Benyalver?
Benyalver, very good. Yeah.
Benyalver, all right, Dean, welcome. His fun fact, you ready for this? He raises chickens, but they're for eggs, let's be clear, not for eating, and he currently has 9 hens. So welcome, Dean. Can you share with us why it is you became Dean of a law school?
I had the good fortune to work for several superb deans. My judge, Guido Calabresi, who had been a dean for many years at Yale, and Bill Traynor when I started teaching at Fordham. And especially Bill, just loved watching him work, and it really inspired me to want to do that work. The work of solving problems and like Jillian said, helping people be better at what they do. I always feel like administration is doing its best when we are practically invisible, and so that facilitation role that the dean plays is something that's really satisfying to me, and something I wanted to do and have enjoyed doing.
Thank you for sharing. Appreciate it. Next on our roster, I should announce that we were supposed to have the Dean of CUNY School of Law, Mary Lou Billick, but her father passed away. So I ask that everyone please keep her in your thoughts and prayers during this time of bereavement. We are, however, very fortunate to have with us in her stead, Dean Ann Cammett. Dean, let's see, her fun fact is, before law school, she was for 12 years an art director. And when she told me that, I said to her, well, you know what? Lawyers really basically are just frustrated artists. So she likes to use both sides of her brain, and I think that's wonderful. Dean Cammett, would you unmute yourself, please, and share with us, how did you come into, let me ask this question instead, because, how did you decide you wanted to be in law administration, or to teach law? What was your journey or your road?
Yeah, thank you for that, Sheila. It's been an interesting road for me because I really had no designs on administration, whatever, but I'm serving currently as Senior Associate Dean for Academic Affairs and Professor of Law. So at some point I will go back to my faculty position, but I think I chose to do this because I truly believe in the mission of CUNY Law, which is law in the service of human needs, and I wanted to take part in helping to build a program that I am very invested in and that I believe in very heavily. And I should also note that with respect to being an art director, I always tell my students that I simply change tools in pursuit of justice. I didn't really change careers.
All right, I get it. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here, seriously. Next, we have the Maurice A. Dean School of Law at Hofstra, the one and only Judge A. Gail Prudenti. She is the Dean and Executive Director of the Center for Children, Families, and the Law as well. Welcome, Judge Prudenti. Her fun fact is this. She says that she absolutely loves pocketbooks and other accessories. So she's about accessorizing. I'm sorry we can't see her full, accessorization today, but we are excited to have her. Judge Prudenti, please share with us why it is that you entered into the academia of law, if you will. And you need to unmute yourself, please.
I'm sorry. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Well,
there you go.
coming from a very different path than many of my colleagues, I basically came to Hofstra Law to be the executive director of the Center for Children and Families, having spent more than 24 years on the bench here in New York, and being able to, and with my chief judge, I was a chief administrative judge, being retirement age, I thought, this is great. I'd love to be the executive director of a not-for-profit and help some people at some of the most difficult times in their lives. And then the president of Hofstra came to me and spoke to me and actually wanted me to go in the dean's office. And I said, I'd really like to be the executive director of the center. And he said, well, see how you like it. And truth be told, I wanted to see how I'd be welcome in the community, because obviously I'm not the poster child for a dean. And I understand that. And I understand, you know, how people feel within a working environment. And I have to say, the students became instantly the loves of my life. Having been a member of the practicing bar for more than 40 years, I loved being able to help them, to get them practice ready, to find them positions. And so when the president of the university said that Dean Lane was going back to the faculty, he asked me if I'd be the interim dean, and then I became the dean. And I have to tell you, it has been a joy in my life. It has been a very pleasant experience, but mostly student focused from my perspective, because my faculty just kind of does it by themselves. They're great.
That's wonderful. So all different paths. I love it. And then finally, but not least of all, we have from Rutgers Law School. We branched out. We went over to our neighbors over in Jersey. We have with us the co-dean and professor of law and Professor Alfred Slocum Scholar, the one and only Dean David Lopez. Welcome, welcome, and thanks for joining us. And his, I don't know if we call it a fun fact, but I definitely think it's a very interesting fact. And that is, he shared with me that he dropped out of high school at the age of 16. And yet, look where he is today. So I think that is quite the journey, and I'd love to hear about it sometime. But thank you so much for joining us. Would you share with us how it is you ended up becoming dean of a law school?
Absolutely, and thank you to the New York City Bar for inviting some Bridges and Tunnels folks. I'm happy to be here. I would say serendipity. Because I also had a very unorthodox path like the judge. And I was a political appointee, ran the litigation program for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission under President Obama. And then when I left, I opened up the DC office of a New York plaintiff side class action firm when I was peer pressured into talking to the recruitment committee at Rutgers. And I think that once I met with the folks at Rutgers Law School, I always say it was analogous to that scene in West Side Story where Tony sees Maria from across the ballroom and their eyes just met. And there was certainly, for me, in the school's longstanding commitment to social justice, longstanding commitment to diversity and inclusion at both the student level and also the faculty and administration level, what I recognize is really just sort of my core values. And I viewed it as sort of an opportunity to take the operational challenges and operational skills and talent that I developed running a nationwide litigation program to law school and giving back and really, you know, being part of this really kind of amazing institution that so reflects the beauty and richness of this country in so many different ways, and has always been a very proud pathway to opportunity for everyone. And I think in that respect, at that moment in time where we were in, what was it now, 2018, it certainly reflected a vision of this country that I certainly shared and recognized that it was not the only vision that was out there. So I'm glad to be part of that with these amazing students and faculty members.
Awesome. Well, thank you. It is so wonderful to have all of you and to learn a little more about you, quite frankly. So let's dive right in, because inquiring minds want to know, what are each of your law schools doing? Because everybody's doing a little bit of something different. I was reading an article in the National Law Journal, maybe it was the beginning of the month, and they talked about over 30 law schools accredited by the ABA. It's over 30. It's about a sixth of those nationwide are actually going online. So I know everybody's doing a little bit of something differently. So I'm going to call on each of you, and I'd like for you, just as briefly as you can, kind of give us a sketch of what your law school will be doing this fall. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm just going to look on the screen here, and I'm going to go with Dean Cammett, if you don't mind. I'll start off with you. What is CUNY going to be doing? Tell us.
Certainly. So early on, our faculty at CUNY Law embraced the challenge of delivering our program fully online, which is a little bit unusual. But in making that decision, I think we maintained a sustained focus on two things. One was continuity, and the other one was equity in making that decision. So with respect to continuity, we assumed that an uninterrupted residential year was highly unlikely given COVID-19, and that we determined as a result that that fully online instruction and fully online student services, if we could sufficiently prepare, would offer the highest quality legal education to our students in very uncertain times. And of course, we had some equity concerns too, which is that even if health concerns permit on-site instruction, that there would at all times be significant numbers of faculty, staff, and students unable to attend in person, given the devastating impact of COVID-19 on the lives of our community. So we made that decision and launched into a very robust program of preparation as a result. And we made that decision early on. So I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about that.
Indeed. So thank you. So we're clear. CUNY, totally online, no in person, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I'm going to switch over to Dean Calvert. What is your school doing? What's happening?
So we're doing a hybrid model. We decided to give everyone the option, students and faculty, to be online or be in the classroom. So we're going to have some classes that are entirely online. It's probably about 70% of our courses are going to be entirely online. The rest will be in person, but with an online component. So in almost all the classes, there will be some number of people in the classroom and then some number of people participating remotely, which has been a challenge. But you know, we'll see. We're going to start classes next week and we'll see how it goes. We had to go through and test every room and make sure that if there was a Socratic dialogue happening in the room, that people participating online could follow what was going on. But we have a great technology staff and they were able to map it all out. And you know, for the first years in particular, we thought being in person was really important. At Cornell, you know, the sense of community among the students is really a key part of the experience. And you know, on the student side, about 80-90, actually among the 1Ls, 90% opted to be in person.
Really? Okay.
And 40% of their courses will be in person,
Right, so
and
that's
then the rest will be
Cornell.
online.
We have a hybrid approach, and the students and faculty, you said faculty as well, get to choose, right?
Yeah, everyone, no one's forced to be in the room now. Once they choose, we have to sort of rely on their choices. So there's a process for changing your choice, but once you choose, but before a deadline, everyone had the option. And then once you're in the building, you know, it's social distancing, everyone's wearing masks. So
Okay, we'll talk
different.
about that. Hold on one second. We're going to come right back to that. All right. First, I'm just trying to figure out what you're doing. Okay, let's go over to New Jersey. Let's talk about Rutgers. Dean Lopez, what are you guys doing?
We're going to be mostly online this year, and we made the decision fairly early. And when I say we, I use the royal we because, you know, we also certainly considered the governor's executive orders, the desires of, you know, the central administration. Rutgers has the unusual structure of having 2 campuses and 2 deans. But I think that, you know, given that where we're located in Essex County, you know, was hit really hard by COVID, and given, you know, the sort of maxim that geography is destiny, and we have so many faculty members and students from the New York City area who felt very uncomfortable getting back on the path or getting back on entry transit and coming out to the school every day, it seemed to make a lot of sense. I think our challenge has been, well, we've really had 2 challenges. I think first, we were not really as far advanced with respect to remote education when the pandemic hit, so we had to pivot pretty quickly. I'm really proud of the way our faculty really stepped up in so many different ways. I was able to pull in someone to serve as a Associate Dean of Distance Education, and she's been wonderful in terms of.
You called it distance education?
We call it distance education.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
All
right.
And she's been really good in terms of steering resources and providing support. And then the other challenge, I think, is really the challenge of community, particularly with respect to the first-year students, in terms of how do you build that network and how do you build that community. Our building is open for students who need it in terms of, Wi-Fi accessibility or adequate workspace. We're still kind of working through what type of other community building events that we can have on the campus, while being mindful that we have students who are not there and we don't want them to, to feel excluded. But I think that, I've been really pleasantly surprised with a couple of things so far. First, we had orientation today, so I didn't just dress up for you.
Brand new.
So we had orientation this morning, and we had our minority student program orientation 2 weeks ago. And I have to say they hit it out of the park, and they were able to leverage every single aspect of the technology to, to build community, to, to get students talking and get students participating. It's not the same. I use the word serendipity, and you don't have the serendipity of people interacting in the building and coming up with ideas and sharing ideas. It's all much more intentional. But I think that we've been trying to step up to the challenge, and I think so far, so good.
Awesome. All right. What's happening on 116th Street, Dean Lester, Columbia?
We're doing something that sounds actually very comparable to what Dean Panielver described about it, Cornell's approach, where we have a hybrid of classes. Some will be about 70% will be online, about 30% in person. We too have 90% of our 1L students, given the choice, want to come back and are planning to come back. And those 1Ls all of them will have some opportunity to take a class in person and some of their classes online. Everybody had a choice about the matter. So very, very comparable to what Cornell's doing.
Got it. Thank you. All right, Dean Leslie, what's going on?
So like other schools in New York City, we have a vertical campus, and that presents particular challenges in a time when we want to put health and safety of students and faculty first. So we decided pretty early on this summer that we had to have mostly remote teaching at Cardozo. And we had about 70% of our entering 1L students who wanted to be in person. And so we gave them a choice to have one of their core classes in person throughout the semester. So they have either torts or civil procedure in person. The professors were also given the choice, so we didn't force anyone to teach. And then we've opened up the building. We've mapped off every classroom and every seat in the library with social distancing, and have created a sort of reservation system so that our upper level students who need places to study or just want to be in the building, student groups can meet as long as they're following the social distancing and mask rules. And so everybody who comes in the building has a reservation to be in the building so that we can ensure that no one is congregating in groups or that we're not endangering anyone's health. And so it's more that the building is a resource for everyone, and most of the classes are remote.
Got it. Mostly remote. Thank you. All right, Judge Prudenti, what's happening at your school?
Well, we are in week 2. We're in the middle of week 2 at Hofstra Law School.
You started already.
We started already.
I didn't realize that. Wow.
Absolutely. Okay. And our 1Ls are here with us at the law school. Only approximately 10 to 12% elected to be, to be online, and that's fine. That was up to them. Minor little glitches, but I have to tell you, everything's going well. We did go from a 14-week semester to a 13 semester. And honestly, I can tell you that under the circumstances, again, it's not easy. It's been very challenging, but our 2 and 3Ls, any classes that have less than 25 students in them, they are at Hofstra. And it's their choice. They could also be online. And so I'd say about a third of our population is here on campus. Our library, like once again, it is closed just to our students and our faculty. And again, what all of my colleagues are doing, and I know all of us believe that health and safety comes first. Every requirement of the CDC, New York State, the governor, their own university, and being part of a university here at Hofstra, we follow all their protocols, and our partner, obviously with our medical school, is Northwell Health. So far so good. We're finishing up by Thanksgiving, which includes all our exams as well, and one day at a time. We'll see where we go.
So I want to hear a little more, if I can, about the health measures you are taking. I've heard thus far social distancing, which is the obvious. I haven't yet heard anybody talk about masks, but I'm assuming it, but I'll get to you in a second. I've also heard about, of course, some people can be online versus being in person. I've heard about reservations, which I think is brilliant. I love that. You have to make a reservation to actually come to the school, and you're monitoring school student groups who do meet. What other measures? I think I'm going to come over to Dean Lester for a minute. Can you tell us what other measures that haven't already been mentioned?
Sure.
Like, is anybody taking temperatures or something like that? I'm just curious. What's
so at Columbia, we are doing what's been referred to as gateway testing, and that is that anybody who comes to Columbia and wants to come on the campus needs to have a COVID-19 test, and we're administering all of those tests.
On campus?
We built the capacity over the summer, yes.
Wow.
To be able to administer tests for everybody as they arrive to campus. Even somebody who comes as a guest or a speaker needs to have a test before they can come into and start to interact with the campus community. And then on an ongoing basis, after those gateway tests, we're going to be doing regular sampling on a weekly basis, random sampling by our public health experts who will then use that as a gauge of what campus health looks like. We've also got something called a self-check app, and every day when somebody comes to campus, they need to answer some questions on their app, and depending on what they answer, it'll either show red or it'll show green. And if it shows green, which means you haven't been in contact with somebody, this is a daily routine. You haven't tested positive, and so forth. Then you get a green, and that allows you to enter campus as well. So there's a daily process that's used that everybody needs to abide by. And then everybody is signing a campus compact in which they promise to abide by a number of behavioral measures, wearing a mask at all times, social distancing 6 feet from other people, abiding by the abiding by the self-check app, and so forth. So wow. I think that gives you some sense. We also have done things like changed all the filters in our HVAC across campus so that we've got very, very, very clean air, the cleanest air in New York.
Okay.
Who knew I would become an expert in HVAC, but now I know a lot the it. So
I hear you. That's a lot of high-tech stuff going on. That's exciting.
Absolutely.
Have anything else to add that you're doing to keep
the only thing I would like to add, and I think most of us are doing all of the same things, and I think that's quite right, and I think Dean Lester did a fabulous job explaining what most everyone's doing. But what we did add with our 2Ls and 3Ls in our leadership groups, that we did come up with a group of health ambassadors who walk through the halls and make sure that everyone is wearing their masks and talks to them about the reasons why, and especially social distancing, which can be hard and challenging for students in this time. So I think we're all, we've all done initial screening. I think, we're all doing everything we possibly can to keep everyone safe. We're all masked at all times. We're walking in the halls or when in the classroom. Our faculty is teaching with masks. We have new microphones and technology and all sorts of things to make people, be able to hear each other on and offline. Also, everyone with their HVAC, has had that upgraded. But I think it's a real community effort. It is a real community effort. I know most of my professors at the beginning of each class do a reminder. Our Student Bar Association sent out a newsletter yesterday that clearly set forth what's expected and what we need to do to keep our community safe. So I think you've heard a lot of what all the brainstorming that has been done has produced, which is, I think, everything that anybody could possibly think of.
Sounds like we've heard the best practices for in-person learning in law schools. And I'm very excited and just encouraged to hear all of this. I really am.
Yeah, I just want to add that although we're fully online, our building remains open for a limited number of students. And we similarly have a reservation system to allow students to come into the building, particularly because we are an access institution.
Yes.
We're following all of the, we call them safety distancing rather than social distancing, because the nomenclature is really important, you know, in terms of the community, particularly at this time. But there are students, many students among ours who need the physical space and the resources to engage with the program. And so we've made a very welcoming environment for them. And we've retrofitted our building to maintain safety distancing and other protocols.
And let me just
one thing that,
oh, go ahead.
well, just, you know, one thing we're doing up here is trying to make as much use of the outdoor space as we can. And so we put up a tent in our courtyard. Usually we put up a tent for the graduation or for reunion, but we're putting it up for the whole fall semester. Well, really until the end of October. You know, and the weather in upstate New York is really wonderful through about Halloween, and then it, you know, becomes
cold.
really wonderful and cold. But you know, since we're ending at Thanksgiving, you know, it's only a couple of weeks after Halloween, so 3 weeks after Halloween. So we're using that space so students can gather outdoors. If they can maintain 6 feet, then they don't have to wear a mask. And so we're putting seating under that and lighting, and there are parts of it that can be reserved for either classroom meetings, again, with a little less of the, you know, because it's outdoors, if people keep apart, they can, you know, a little more natural interactions that they can have outdoors than indoors.
And see, but that's the difference though. Some people are in the suburbs, but then we have others who are in the city, who are in urban atmospheres. And so it makes for a very different set of circumstances. So that's interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I also just wanted to go back to what Dean Kemet was talking about very quickly, because just in case people don't get it, let me just spell it out for you. There are some people, students, who are in situations where they live with their parents, maybe siblings, and the house or apartment, I should say, is crowded. And so they honestly don't have the space to study and engage in their classes like they should. And so it's very important that we do make sure that there is a space for them, whether it's at the law school, maybe the city bar eventually, who knows, but you know, we need to make sure that there is space to help those people. So I just wanted to make it clear why we're talking about accessibility and why it's, you know, it's that important. I'm curious, I'm gonna go to, I think, Dean Leslie. How did you determine the mix of online and in-person classes? Like, I know some people were saying, okay, we let people choose, but then you have to go through the whole, you know, rigmarole about, okay, which classes will be online, which ones won't? And can you tell us a little bit about your thought process and what
well, we surveyed our faculty and I lucked out. I had a group of faculty who were willing to teach in person who taught torts, and a few who were willing to teach in person who teach civil procedure. And so that was our answer. Each 1L has the option of taking either torts or civil procedure in person. So it just kind of sorted out. Although everything else took an incredible amount of planning, that thing fell in our lap a little bit.
I can only imagine. Is there anyone who did something different other than just looking at which faculty are willing to come in and teach? Yes, Judge Prudenti. What did
Yes, I think at Hofstra we did do something a little bit differently, that all our 1L classes are in person. Okay, so all our first year classes are in person. And then our second and third year was based upon the space that we had at the law school. How many classes could we get in person? And what it turned out was only smaller classes of 25 or less. So there's, I believe there's 66 in-person classes out of 144 this semester.
Well, may I just ask you, I'm just curious, were there any faculty members who were supposed to teach 1Ls and said, I can't do it. I have pre-existing conditions. It'd be too dangerous for me.
Absolutely. Yes, there
Okay.
were. And the university had set up a system where, you know, being part of a university, obviously they were encountering that in other schools as well. And they set up a system where you went to human resources and you filed an application. And then I had 4 professors do that, and
Okay.
they were granted, you know, granted the accommodation, all 4 of them. And so we accommodated them. And then with all of our other professors that are online, of course they have concerns. And of course, you know, this is a very anxiety-ridden time for everyone. So what we have tried to do is on a case-by-case basis and on a group-by-group basis. I believe there's approximately 10 professors teaching in-person 1Ls, that we are weekly discussions and we address their concerns, and we will continue to do so and carefully monitor.
Got
It's
it.
been a challenge.
Dean Lester, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I'll just add that in addition to our making sure that 1Ls had an opportunity to take classes in person, when we were looking at the upper year classes, I want to say that we did something that almost was the converse of what Dean Prudenti just described. We looked at really large classes that I've identified over the years as classes that most upper year students at one time or another take. So, you know, and we wanted to choose some of those classes to make sure they were available so that we could have as many, you know, increase the likelihood that every upper year student, you know, would have a chance to take a class that they'd be taking anyway. A class they'd be taking anyway would be available in an in-person format. So most people take corporations. And so we wanted to make sure there were a couple of sections of corporations. You know, most people take, you know, administrative law or federal courts. And so we wanted to make sure we had some of those classes there, rather than focusing on the smaller upper year classes where we thought they're more specialized, and, you know, a student might want to take a class in person, but say, but I don't want to take national security law or, you know, this specialized class. So, you know, that was what we tried to do. And I think we succeeded reasonably well. We shall see.
All creative approaches. I love this. Okay, let me throw this out there. For those who may not know, there are ABA standards. And of course, the Court of Appeals has requirements, time limits, if you will, on how much online education you can have. So let's see, who would like to address this? I'm curious, like, have you thought about this? How did you deal with it? Dean Peñalver, you seem to be shaking your head. Would you care to share with us?
Well, it's, you know, those restrictions they have teeth, and they can prevent our students from being eligible to sit for the bar, for example. The ABA has already granted a kind of prospective waiver, or sort of indicated its willingness to do that for the full academic year. The New York Court of Appeals has granted that waiver for the fall semester, not yet for the spring semester. So at some point, I expect that we'll have to ask them for a waiver for the spring semester. Because the spring, you know, is likely to be very similar to the fall. It's something all the New York law deans have been talking about and thinking about, you know, since March.
I can imagine. Dean Kamet, since you're doing online strictly, what have the teachers been doing, the faculty, to actually prepare themselves? Like, are there classes on how to give online, you know, classes, or what do you do?
Yeah.
Educate the educators so that they can educate.
I have to say, you know, our faculty has been wonderful. We are really a teaching faculty. They are very engaged in pedagogy on so many levels. And so it was not hard to get folks to buy into the additional training that it required to really create a successful program online. Of course, the jury's still out. We're just starting, right? But all of us in New York and throughout the country had to operate under triage conditions in the spring. And so we did that. You know, we were able to complete our semesters, get variances or whatever was needed from the ABA and the Court of Appeals to move on. But we engaged early on, I think, in a working group that worked with the faculty on a weekly basis to garner like pretty universal participation in a discussion about online teaching, asynchronous and synchronous teaching, with the focus on proper formative and summative assessment tools. And then we hired an instructor to teach us instructional design specifically for the law school environment. This is how we spent our summer vacation. And I have to say the faculty was all in. The university has provided a sort of a universal access to Zoom. So that's not only good for our faculty, it has robust, parts of the program for webinars and so forth, but it's good for the students, and the students now have access to it so that their clubs and so forth and their study groups can be active. So I have to say, academically speaking, we were pretty much all in, and the faculty was very engaged in this. And we're continuing to grow as we go along, and we look forward to building this out. One thing I would say is that, in the spring, when we operated more in triage mode, we did a survey of students to find out what that experience was like, what they wanted, what they thought would make their experience better, and we followed with those protocols.
Got it. Okay, exams and grades. I know that there are some law school students out there listening right now, and they're either happy or they're sad. I don't know, but let me start with, let's try Dean Lopez. I'm curious what you're doing over there in Jersey. What's going to happen with exams and grades? Are you sticking to letters? Are you doing pass-fail? Or what's happening?
Last semester, because we pivoted so quickly, we went completely to pass-fail, and we did that. We didn't do that lightly. We had several town halls. We're very inclusive and very democratic in terms of our decision-making. So we heard from the faculty, we heard from the students. The students were probably divided 51 to 49 on whether to go to pass-fail. I think by the end of the semester, most of them understood why we did that. This year, we're back to our regular grading system because, the students really kind of had advance notice in terms of what the grades look like. We're using the exam software that we've used before. We didn't have too many glitches last year at all. So I think, hopefully that'll be good. It's going to be different, but I think hopefully, that will work out okay. But I think that the big decision point was really last year during the pandemic. I know law schools all over the country were trying to figure out how to handle this. And I think particularly those of us in the New York City region, where so many members of our communities were impacted by COVID. At the end of the day, it became, I think, a fairly straightforward decision.
Is there anyone here who is not having grades this semester? Is there anyone who's switched to pass-fail? No. Okay. All right. So we're one of court. All right. Let's talk about the students. Someone mentioned it earlier, how they'd had some I guess you actually reached out to them and you had surveys and things of that nature. I'm curious about maybe we could have had students on the panel, I'm sorry, but I know that all of you have been in touch with your students in one way or another. So I'm just curious, what is the reaction? What's the mood of these folks? Because I will tell you, my heart goes out to them. Like, I can't even imagine going through all this chaos. It's hard enough as it is. And for them to have to go to school and things are always changing. I see you're nodding your head, Judge Prudenti. What are you finding? How are the students feeling about all of this?
What I'm finding is a myriad of emotions, but basically excitement. Excitement about being in law school, excitement about starting their career, not wanting to hold back, really wanting to proceed, with their lives and their careers. But there are some that have great anxiety and want to be online. They're great law students, and what I was surprised about, and I think maybe my colleagues were, maybe they weren't, I was surprised that it was a year of robust applications, good qualifications, and that, we were more selective at Hofstra than we've been in years, which surprised me in this environment. So I would say really very, 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 interested students, anxious to get started, excited, and just trying to maneuver their way through that first year.
Well, those of us who go into the law, we tend to have that A personality anyway, right? So
exactly right.
That resiliency. But does anyone disagree? Have you had Yes, please, Dean Lopez. What are you?
I certainly agree with respect to the incoming students, particularly, as they come in during, what I called in an article, the Great Pandemic and the Great Reckoning. I think this is going to be a very special class, and they understand really the zeitgeist and where we are at this point of history, and they excite me. I think the ones who are going to run the world is going to be the class of 2020, because I think that they ended up abused in so many different ways with the canceled graduations and the pivoting to online at the end of their careers. And now everything that they're going through, particularly in this area with respect to the bar exam, hopefully, these are issues that are going to have to be resolved, but they're extremely difficult issues. And they really put a lot of these students, a lot of these graduates in really at different sides of various equity issues, and they're struggling. And I just think as a bar, we really have an obligation to think about them. But I am sure that when the dust settles, we're going to see great things out of the class of 2020. We may not get a lot of giving to the law schools, but we're going to see
creativity
I
and
think we're going to
resilience.
see tremendous industrial. I think they're going to be very industrious and very creative. But I can't say that that's a particularly happy group.
I get it. And that's a beautiful segue. Thank you, Dean Lopez. I mean, what, if anything, are you all doing to assist our 2020 graduates? Any kind of supplementation? Are there extra things you're doing? I don't want to give out ideas. Let me just see what you're doing. How about Dean Leslie? I see you shaking your head. Would you care to share?
I think what's most important to note is that the New York Law School deans in particular have really come together as a group. And it's been, there are silver linings, small ones to this pandemic. And it's important to focus on those and remember that they exist, because it has been very, very meaningful, I think, for most of us, that we now meet regularly and we try to work together to promote the interests of our graduates. And we've I think advocated, both for the online option for the bar, but also for the diploma privilege, because we understand there are particular difficulties about an online bar, especially for people who don't have appropriate space in which to take the bar, or have issues with their internet or quiet time. And so I'm really happy to say, really working together as a team to address these issues. And I feel fortunate. I don't know if in ordinary times we would have been able to, without Zoom, meet so regularly and come together so beautifully. And it's been really fantastic.
And it's interesting you say that, because Dean Diller, when we were preparing for this, he shared that with me, and he thought it was very special. And one of the, as you said, silver linings, that all of a sudden all of you are much closer and there's more communication. And I think that's a beautiful thing, unification here. Dean Lopez, I don't mean to leave you out. I'm just curious, anything happening over in Jersey, or have these folks invited you to their talks? What's going on?
Yeah, a little bit, but we've been working with in sort of the same manner with the Big Ten deans. So we meet regularly with the Big Ten deans. And then within Jersey, we have only 2 law schools. We have 2 campuses at Rutgers. So we have 3 deans, 2 law schools, and we've worked we've worked very well together, and had a lot of access to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. We're not, particularly on the same page yet with respect to the recent graduates. And I think there's still a lot of issues that the states are trying to figure out with respect to the administration of the online exam. Florida recently canceled. Indiana canceled. And so, as someone who is a former employment lawyer, I would start from thinking about the exam in terms of, not only, the equity impact, but whether it's job related and consistent with business necessity, whether it's a valid measure for what it purportedly seeks to do. And I think that the students are doing some excellent advocacy with a lot of good allies on that front in terms of whether.
And I want to actually zero in again on our 2020 graduates just for a hot second, if I may. So I'm just curious, is there extra career counseling that's being offered to the students? Yay, nay?
One thing I have found is that what we are doing is we're doing, they're taking their bar review course, but we're doing supplemental, as we were doing when we originally had to go online, what we call a PASS program, which is, a deeper dive than, let's say, one of the providers might give, one of the bar service providers may give, looking at their whether it's be at their essays or training them to do, the multiple choice, and just a real practice over and over again, but with a real critique. So we've added that for our graduates as well. These are individuals. We also had a student emergency fund that prior to their graduation, if they were in need of anything, we had established a student emergency fund. Some people found, their laptops crashing, or they really didn't have the funds to continue to pay their online services and things. So we were able to help them. And we always have a fund for individuals who have a hard time, coming up with the money to take a bar review course. And so we continue to do that. But what I'd like to say is, I, as a dean, can only say that I have learned so much from my colleagues, that for me, it has been one of the best educational experiences that I've had. And they've been really generous with their spirit and their time and their talent. So I think that all of our students, I can say for the students at Hofstra, are the beneficiaries of their largesse, and knowing what they're doing going forward and getting ready for the bar exam and listening to their ideas.
That's actually really warms my heart, because I hadn't even thought about the emergency funds. I love that. Let me just touch one other, if I may, throw it out there. I'm just curious. And if not, I think it's a way in which, frankly, the city bar could assist. Because I'm very much on this drive, y'all, especially since this pandemic, about mental health and wellness. As I said, I can only imagine the kind of anxiety that students are probably going through, because I know attorneys are going through it, myself included. So are there any kind of services that the law schools are offering in that respect? I'm just curious. I see you shaking your head, Dean Lester, and then Dean Kamet, please.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been front and center for our community as a whole. I want to say across our community, for the people who work in the law school, in addition to the students. We've done a number of different kinds of things. We very self-consciously and very intentionally built community since the end of this. Well, we began when we first moved online, but we very quickly realized that it was going to be important to maintain that sense of belonging, that sense of membership, that sense of there being a place that could anchor you after the structure of the academic year started to, ended. So what we've done is a number of different things. Everything from very direct services. So we do have a counselor a psychologist in the school who takes appointments, and we've had multiple people come in and be able to do that to provide people with someone to talk to. And the university also has tremendous resources for people who really need counseling. But I just want to say we have yoga classes and mindfulness, a wonderful mindfulness program, which we expanded this summer. So that there are 2 different sessions a week of that program, panels, reading groups, a really lively and rich set of programming around anti-racism, as many of our students, really were hungry. Everybody, our staff, yes, our faculty, our students were hungry for an opportunity to be able to come together and to talk and to search and to learn about themselves and learn about their role within our complex society, and to be able to engage with others around some of these challenges. And all of these I consider to be part of a larger tapestry of maintaining community is part of, and friendship, and not feeling isolated and being able to engage with others is part of what's important to mental health.
Amen to that. I agree.
Very, very important for us.
So I must say, like, even my firm, Arnold and Porter, we have a meditation session every day to which is accessible, and it's just been beautiful, and we're doing it. And just so you know, as the president of the city bar, it is one of my 6 pillars, mental health and wellness, and that's why I had to ask about it. And I'm sorry, Dean Cammett, because you've been wanting to jump in on this, so go ahead.
I was so excited by this question, and I'm really glad that you answered it. You asked it, actually, and I want to follow up from what Dean Lester said, because we at CUNY had been embarking on a health and wellness program for a long time, and that included some very robust anti-racism initiatives, which we did not want to be interrupted by COVID, because now more than ever, those questions are coming to the fore, right? And so I have to say we've had the benefit of a really exceptional dean of students who has made her linchpin health and wellness and has put in place all kinds of activities, including mindfulness sessions and recurring mindfulness, yoga, and other sessions. And we too have on staff a counselor and a very robust student affairs office to address these issues. And I'm very grateful for her. I mean, I couldn't even begin to describe the breadth of the activities that she's put in place, which I think are really meeting its moment right now. And so, just one funny little anecdote is that we just had our orientation, and we started out orientation with an art of listening session where we partnered with the Lincoln Center to have jazz musicians talk to the students about listening, and then we talked about client-centered work. And it was just an amazing program that was put on by our Office of Student Affairs, which I think introduced our law students to our program in a very left and right brain way, just going back to our earlier point. So I think it's so important now for students, not just, and for our communities, not just to focus on the academics that we need to be successful in the fall, but the supports that we give to students to help them maintain.
Thank you.
I could just add, in addition to
Yes.
all of those things, we did work on mindfulness and offering mindfulness opportunities. Did not get a huge attendance for that. I'm going to be
Really?
yeah. But what we got great turnout for were series that our professors put on that were fun and that had some humor in them.
Okay.
So one of our beloved professors did Seinfeld in the Law series. Another one did the Case of the Week, where every week was a wine tasting, and he took them to another part of the world and explained, the grapes and how to think about various wine. And those we had, and then alumni started emailing saying, "Can we get in on this?" So we extended it. But it's funny. I find people need a break and they need to laugh once in a while.
Oh my God, it's true.
And that's turned out to be some of our most popular.
And that's a part of wellness, though. Let's be clear. That too
part of connecting with other people.
Indeed. Well, a few people have already mentioned that these are just critical times, because not only do we have the health pandemic, not only do we have the economic pandemic, but we are also dealing with a lot of social unrest, okay? And in particular, on the racial front. So I guess, let me see, can we go to Dean Lopez? How did you know? I see you taking your mute off. You knew I was coming to you, huh? Dean Lopez, you mentioned earlier the importance of social justice and your programming there. I'm just curious, can you talk with us a little bit about, has the pandemic, in your view, from your experience, has it disproportionately affected students of color? And is this pandemic in any way affecting the social justice programming you have at Rutgers?
Certainly the pandemic has disproportionately affected, communities of color, including our students of color. But in terms of the work that we've done at the law school, I think that, there's a tremendous amount of buy-in on the part of the entire faculty, or most of the faculty, with respect to our historical work in that space, our various centers that deal with issues of racial equity and race and religion and gender. And so I think that our faculty really wanted to make sure that we didn't go back to the conversations that they had at the school in 1967 following the civil unrest in Newark, which changed the school, and it changed the bar in the state of New Jersey because it led to the MSP program, it led to the clinics. And so when our faculty put out a statement, they wanted to make sure that it was it wasn't just platitudes, but it included several specifics with respect to curricular changes and also changes in terms of our responsibilities as legal scholars, and that it built upon what had already been done at the institution through the years, and that it moved forward. And so as I sat through the orientation sessions, with the sort of magical thing that I just discovered called the voice thread, where the students introduce themselves and they tell a little bit about themselves, it became clear very quickly that that there are several students here because they understand that during the great pandemic and great reckoning, that they are being called to do something that's very special, and that our institutions are wobbly, that our social contract, many have said, is either unraveling or completely unraveled. And to hear the students, really be inspired to raise their voices and own their own narratives and to kind of construct a different and more just world, that makes it all worth it. And I think that I'm very proud to see that they were able to work on an institutional platform with the faculty that has long held that as part of the core values of the institution.
They are leaders of the future, right? And I have this thing about lawyers that we are important. I'm not trying to be elitist in any way, but we are a vanguard. We are the ones who are supposed to be sounding the trumpet for justice and doing all we can to make it a more fair society. So that's exciting. Judge Prudenti, I saw you shaking your head a few times. Is there something you want to share on this as well?
Well, I totally agree with you. I think lawyers and judges and people involved in the legal system and academia, are problem solvers. And this is one of those times in our country that the problems may seem overwhelming to others, but I really think that our communities are set to go forward. What I have found is that, whether it be our Friedman Center or a number of our centers, our student leadership, like our the BALSA, the Black Law Students Bar Association, the Student Bar Association, Latino Bar Associations, they have stepped up. And what they don't want is, they just don't want to hear the platitudes anymore. They don't want to hear the nice statements from the faculty, the nice statements from the dean, they want to see, what are you going to do about it? Okay. And what are those positive steps? And what I have found is it's the programming. It's the programming where they can hear from academics from around the country that can tell them what they have found in their research and what they have found in their experience. And they want to hear from people from all different walks of life. At Hofstra, 33% of our student population at the law school identify themselves as coming from a very diverse background. So we have a very active diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, and they are in the midst of program after program, whether it be discussing a movie, and we've had great turnouts, online, discussing a movie that deals with justice in America and racial justice in America, or whether it be listening to a webinar or podcast that one of our professors put together. So
Wonderful.
They want to be heard and they want to do things. And
I hear that.
know.
Great. Thank you so much. Very creative ways to make sure we engage people and that they feel like they're a part of this fight, the struggle for justice. Beautiful. Now, I'm going to call on her only because I know that we have a lot of international students at Columbia. So Dean Lester, tell me, what's going on? How are our international students faring, given all the different things going on? I'll just say that. And what, if any, impact has it had on your LLM programs?
I'll be honest, it's been really tough on our international students. They faced a number of hurdles over the last several months that came at them in unexpected ways. And there was by the Department of Homeland Security at one point indicated that if a student, wasn't, without going back to too much detail, there was an initial wave of a very dire situation for our international students who believed they wouldn't be able to come at all. And then there was a walking back of that policy so that now international students can come to the United States. if they're in a hybrid program, but there are still challenges associated with their being able to travel to the United States and uncertainty about that, uncertainty about the bar exam, uncertainty about whether or not, if they come to the United States, they'll be able to get back to their home country for within a reasonable period of time, or whether they'll have to remain here for some period of time. So lots and lots of challenges. And I guess what I want to say about it is that you identified it right, Sheila, as an alum of Columbia, that international students are, they're such a big part of the fabric of the school, just sort of integral to everything we do and our identity. And so for us, it's been extraordinarily important to maintain close contact, to be in regular conversation, to provide bedrock assurances that we are advocating for our international students. We did join a federal lawsuit when the initial Homeland Security policy came out to push that back. And we're going to keep supporting our international students. We also have about a sizable proportion of our JD population that are international students, not just LLM students. About 18 to 20% of our JD population are international students, so it's really across the fabric of the school. I'll be brief just in adding a final piece to this, which is that we're looking forward to the year ahead, and for international students, the situation is still very, very much evolving. Many of them still can't come and school's about to start. Right. And as soon as they can come, we want to make sure that we're able to facilitate their process coming back, help them to get safely into the country and get settled. And that might mean that we are doing that in October as opposed to in the normal time. And some of our LLM students have chosen to start in January. We created a special start date. They could start in September, or they could start in January and then just stay through the summer. And we created a third summer term, especially for that international LLM population. So we're doing everything we can in very uncertain times, but our commitment remains, as I said, bedrock.
Hey, let me throw out a quick issue. We're just going to hit it and keep moving, but I do think I need to at least raise this issue. Because I have been reading about some students are complaining. Some students are saying, hey, I shouldn't have to pay my full tuition, quite frankly, given everything that's going on. I do know, I believe it was Georgetown actually offered, I think it's a 5% discount for those, but it's in particular for those who have been financially hard hit or impacted by the pandemic. So just kind of throwing that out there, financially what's going on. I know someone, made the observation earlier, and I think it's correct that maybe the class of 2020 isn't necessarily going to be the great financial donors, given what they're going through. But, and I'm not even going to actually say that that's necessarily going to happen, because quite frankly, they have their future ahead of them. And my hopes and prayers is that they're going to continue to do well and ascend and climb, and they're going to give back, because your law schools, from what I'm hearing, have been very attentive and have been just very gracious and wonderful in trying to do what's best for them. But again, there are some people who are disgruntled. So I'm just curious, and I call on you, Dean Peñalver, what is your attitude, or what are you seeing in that respect? Are students complaining about tuition, and what, if anything, is Cornell doing about it?
Can't say that we've had, tremendous complaints. We've had some inquiries about our tuition. We had, planned our tuition back in like November or something for this year. So it's something that gets approved very early in the academic year for the following academic year. And we had a pretty typical tuition increase built into the plan, and that's been implemented. And, I think we'll look very carefully at what we expect the situation to be next year as we think about, the tuition for 2021, 22. But our cost structure is not really flexible. I mean, whether we're online or in person, our primary costs are associated with our people, and they're all still with us. So it's we have staff and faculty, and everyone's working hard to produce a curriculum that is as robust and diverse as it was before we went online. So or partially online. So So, our ability to kind of cut tuition is really limited because we can't really cut our costs in a way that would make that possible.
Dean Cammett, may I come to you on this question as well? Would you feel comfortable commenting? Because I'm thinking about, urban and your student population and access to justice and all of that good stuff. So what, if anything, can you add?
Yes, I would just say, pursuant to our access mission, our tuition, and because we're part of the City University of New York, remains relatively low anyway. So our price point is such that we probably don't have a lot of flexibility, and and it would be certainly done in conjunction with the larger university agrees to do in any event, right? And so we're not there yet.
Got it. Okay, we have talked about the issues, the challenges, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want to focus now on the future. Let's talk future, okay? When we get through this crisis, what is legal education going to look like? Do you think it's going to change? Is it changing? I mean, obviously it's changing right now, but is there going to be a new normal? And if so, what do you envision it being? I'm curious. Dean Lopez, you want to jump in and share your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think there's two ways to look at this. There's a whole question of what happens at the law school, but there's also the question of what happens to our beloved legal doctrine, which I think is really going to be placed under a lot of stress in terms of its ability to serve society in many different areas. And I know the faculty at Columbia looked at that. They put out something on the pandemic right away. And we've done that too in terms of really talking about what the future holds for us with respect to issues of the law. I mean, I think for us, and I'm going to be very parochial here, not deign to speak for the broader issue. We're a program that did not have any online options, and we were in the process of putting them together. And I think that online education as part, not the central part, I would hope, but I think as part of the options that we have at Rutgers is going to be with us. And I think all of the tools and all of the benefits will appeal to certain students more than it will appeal to others. We've noticed, with the returning students that there actually seems to be much more of an appetite for distance learning, and for not having to deal with, the 5 o'clock, commute into Newark. And that they have that opportunity. So I think that's certainly something, that is going to be, here to stay in terms of the way that education is delivered. I think that given that online distance learning, I think we're all learning, forces the faculty to be much more intentional about the learning objectives. Instead of teaching the same class they've taught for 20 years, now they have to think, okay, how am I going to deliver this? What am I trying to teach? And to watch our amazing faculty step up to this challenge is wonderful. But I think that is actually going to benefit, benefit legal education in terms of the greater intentionality as to what they're trying to teach. I think certainly at a place like Rutgers, where, as I said, geography is destiny, we haven't really been able to leverage, I think, synergies between Camden and Newark because they're a little bit too far away to take classes of both. Now I think there's an opportunity. We have students from both campuses taking stuff at both classes. With all of that said, I am always mindful of one of our professors of constitutional law, who also happens to be the head of the union, who threw out the challenge that online education not be part of the shock doctrine of the pandemic, and that it's not used as sort of a backdoor way to kind of undermine our broader objectives to focus on issues of justice and truth, but instead becomes just a portal for revenue generation. And so I think about that all the time. And unfortunately, he announced his retirement, but I'm pretty sure that he has many other people to pick up that banner on the faculty that'll keep our feet to the fire to make sure that in our effort to, make sure that we, that we have a good business model, that we don't forget that the centerpiece of what we're doing, particularly as a public institution, is not about making money. It's about providing outstanding education. And yes, Dean, in the chat, that is who I am talking about, my beloved Jim Pope.
I could add
A lot
another
of secret messaging going on there.
He's one of
Dean
my
Leslie.
favorite people. I love him. He's great.
Dean Leslie, what do you think? Is online learning here to stay?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, you know, lawyers and law professors tend to be conservative, small c. Change often comes slowly. We teach in a way that we've taught for 100 years, although we improve slightly and we add more skills, but all of these things take a long time. What we're seeing now is this rapid change in the way that we're teaching, and I do think that a lot of it's for the better. One of the things that I think we've all been trying to implement in the last couple of years, prodded by the ABA, is to give students a better sense of how they're doing before their final exam. So we had this old model where you learn all semester and then you get hit with one exam, and that's the measure of your performance. And we'd all been trying to learn how to give students assessments along the way. And I would say it was slow going, and I can't speak for every dean of every law school. And suddenly, the opportunities presented by technologies like Zoom, I think really facilitate your ability to give students small quizzes, assessments, breakout rooms where they come back together. And our faculty's been working all summer. Every Tuesday, instead of a faculty meeting, they get together and teach one another. Someone else leads it. And suddenly they're really being creative about how to keep students assessing progress. And I think that's fantastic and something that you can bring right into the classroom. You can use that technology in person or else through Zoom. So I think that's one change. The other thing, I think, another silver lining, is that I think it's really going to change the way that we build community outside of the classroom. Because certainly in an area where we are, with very urban, people often have completely different lives outside of the law school, or 4 or 5 different social groups of which they're a part. We've had much better turnout at a lot of our academic events, especially for students, but also for alumni, because they don't have to travel.
That's
They
true.
don't have to commute. They don't have to decide, do I have to give up an entire evening to come hear the speaker and maybe miss dinner with my kids. They can pop in for 45 minutes and pop out. And it's been really energizing to see us build community outside of the classroom in a really successful way using online. And fundraising, we'll have to see. You know, that's the thing that we know we have to do a lot of as deans is fundraising. I personally have been doing a lot of Zoom cocktail hours. The jury's out on how effective that is. But so whether that's a change that we'll keep, we'll see. But certainly I think for extracurricular activities and assessments, it's been really great.
All right, I'm going to do just 1 or 2 lightning round questions. And how it's going to go, it's going to be a yes or no question. And you're going to raise your hand. So let's see what happens here. Let's try it. Do you think that the pandemic will impact New York's status as the largest legal market in the country? If you think there will be an impact, and I assume a negative impact, would you please raise your hand?
Wait, we're raising if we think there will be a negative impact?
To the New York legal market. Are we going to have less people applying to law school? Okay, I see an optimistic group here. I love it. Okay, then let's talk about it on a global level. The United States has been a major center of legal education on a global level. Do you think that it will be negatively impacted by what's going on now? If you think so, please raise your hand.
Short
Okay.
term.
Oh, everybody. All right. Then in that case, wait, I guess, well, first I saw Dean Pelliaver. You raised your hand. So tell me why.
Well, I think this relates less to the pandemic and more to some of the things that Jillian was talking about earlier in terms of how the international students have been treated by the government. I mean, it's,
Okay.
you know, they're coming here, they're spending, you know, a lot of money on tuition to get an experience, an educational experience and a cultural experience. And the government's made very clear, we don't want you here. And that's, you know, they have alternatives. They have Canada, they have the United Kingdom, and those people do want them there. And so if you're a student in Turkey or in Mexico or in China or Hong Kong, and you're looking where in the world, you know, can I go spend a year and get a master's degree? You know, I think previously the United States was at the top of that list, and I think we've taken a hit. And hopefully we can recover that, but I do worry that impact will last.
Another lightning round question. In 3 words or less, tell us, what is it that's mostly keeping you up at night as a dean of the law school? What is it that's mostly keeping you up at night? So that's your stress factor. And we're going to end on a good note, I promise you. But what is mostly causing you to lose some sleep? Let's start with Dean Cammett. 3 words or less.
I would say the 2020 election.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll leave that alone. Politics, we're moving on. We're moving on. Dean Lopez. Don't get me in trouble. Nonprofit, 501c3. No, okay. Dean Lopez.
The world.
Oh, that was kind of deep. Okay, we're low right now, but we're going to come back up. I promise you. Dean Lester, talk to me.
Issues of inequality.
Yes, yes. Dean Leslie.
Health and safety of students, staff, and faculty.
Got it. All right, that's more than 3, but I get it. Okay, understood. Dean Prudenti.
Yeah, definitely safety of students and faculty.
Dean Pelliver.
I stay up at night worrying about what I haven't thought of. You know, like what could go wrong that we haven't, that we haven't gamed out.
The unknown, huh? Dean Diller, I see you're on still there. I think you should just come on and join us because we're getting ready to close up. I would love to see you. Thank you for joining us and for all you've done. How about you? You mind answering that question as well? What's keeping you up at night, sir?
So everything that everyone mentioned does in fact keep me up at night. The only thing I will add is just because of the climate in the country and the election and the pandemic combined, everyone is on edge and everyone is anxious. And so, so trying to, promote discourse and getting people to take the kind of longer view, I think is really important at this moment. But I'm kept awake by everything everyone said.
Okay, I thought I'd go ahead and I'm going to try to ask just a few of the questions that have been posed to us from our audience. So let me start with this one very quickly. Given the likely long-term remote law school instruction and the substantially greater effectiveness of small law school classes and workshops than webinars with more than 20 attendees, what are the opportunities for experienced and licensed attorneys with some experience with online CLE and college instructions for teaching remotely? I think it's a wonderful question because some of our members of the bar, it sounds like, would be interested in assisting and contributing. I saw some thumbs up on that. Anybody want to speak to that? Dean Diller, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I will say, for this semester, we did not use it as an opportunity to add lots more classes. Frankly, we were really caught up with trying to plan what we have. But if you go long-term, you see that we really can, using online, offer things we could not offer before, and particularly the disappearance of geography as a factor and travel needs means that I think we do have a lot more opportunities to offer really exciting things to our students.
There was oh yeah, please go ahead, Dean Cammett.
I just want to add to that because this sort of follows from an earlier question, which is it does expand the possibilities for reaching into community and making law school part of larger communities more possible. And the geography is no longer an issue. That can be global, that can be into the communities that we serve, into the other legal communities. And I think that we're already seeing some of that with the advent of Zoom technology and other techniques like that.
Wonderful point. I see there's a question here. It says, are these plans just for the semester or for the full school year? I will say that when I asked the question, I prefaced it with this semester, just this semester. So I'm just going to put that out there for whomever asked that question. We've also been asked, I already addressed international students. As an instructional designer, I'm interested in the technology used. Can the deans elaborate on the technology used to facilitate courses? I'm going to ask that only 2 of you answer that question. Dean Leslie, do you mind sharing with us what platforms you're using?
Yes, we are using a course management system called Canvas that I think a lot of people use that has some capabilities, but then overlaying Zoom into that. So you go into your Canvas course and then we're using Zoom. But so because I'm not a software designer, I'm not exactly sure how to answer that question because we have been spending a lot of time this summer understanding how to link up whiteboard technology and other kinds of things into designing the course. But because they're live courses and not asynchronous, they tend to run similarly to a Socratic course in person. In our fully online programs, like our online LLM and intellectual property law, those are designed with a partner that we have who specializes in online courses, and those are very different because they're because they span various time zones. They're not synchronous, and so those are designed very differently. It's not so much a Socratic law school class, and for that we've retained specialists who specialize in designing online courses of that nature.
Got it. Very quickly, I saw Dean Lester, you seemed anxious to.
Sure. We've adopted something. We've installed something called high flex technology, and what it is multiple cameras within a classroom, as well as a sophisticated setup in front of the classroom, not the usual laptop of earlier times, but multiple screens that the professor can see, and it allows students to participate in the room live, as well as people participating virtually, all at the same time. And so the students in the room can see pictures of the faces of those students who are participating virtually. The professor can see both. And the students participating virtually could, for example, be in a breakout room with live people as well as virtual people. But that's all enabled by multiple cameras and multiple processors in the room. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I've participated in one such class, and it was really tremendous, really a lot of fun.
What is next? Avatars? I don't know. This is just like amazing to me. But anyway, one more lightning question. Did the law schools in New York City find a higher percentage of applications from students residing in the New York City area than you have had in the past? And I just want you to raise your hand if that's true. I'll say it again. Did the law schools in New York City find a higher percentage of applications from students residing in New York City? Please raise your hand.
Yeah, we did.
Did. Okay. Woo! Well, we got through a lot of topics. I know there were other questions we could have asked, but I am so thankful to each one of you. And I don't know if you've heard, but President Boston of the New York City Bar has declared that this is hashtag Bar of Hope. Hashtag Bar of Hope. So we have to end on a good note. So I, at this point, would just like to ask each of you to just give some pearls of wisdom, words of wisdom to our students. I really want to focus in on students right now because, you know, that's our heart, that's our future. Please give them some words of wisdom. I'm going to start with you. I'm just going to go in the order I see all of you. So Dean Cammett, please, what words do you have in parting?
I would just say, hang in there. We're just as committed to you as we have been in the past, despite the changed circumstances, and we will meet the moment.
All right. Dean Lopez.
Own your story, own your voice, be courageous. Always be courageous. Do not let conventional wisdom keep you down. You write your script. It's not written for you.
Dean Lester.
I believe strongly that where you have purpose, you have hope. And everybody needs to find their purpose as we go forward. And we've been distracted, is putting it mildly, but the pandemic has a way of having helping people to lose their anchor to their purpose. So find that purpose again, recenter yourself on that purpose, and pursue that purpose. If that purpose is that you want to pursue social justice, if that purpose is that you want to make markets work better, if that purpose is that you want to attack climate change, find that purpose and pursue that. That gives you hope.
All right, Dean Leslie.
The skills that you will develop and need this semester to be able to function, given what's going on all around you, are the skills that are going to make you a very effective attorney and help you be of service to others. The ability to breathe, the ability to focus, the ability to get back up, the ability to accept what you can't control and to control what you can, and the ability to concentrate, and the ability to develop empathy for other people and to help one another get through this. All of those things will serve you well the rest of your life, not just as a lawyer, but as a human being.
Dean and Honorable Judge Prudenti.
Oh, thank you. I think in these times, my best advice to my students would be to keep your options open and remember, you know, your problem solving, you're being trained to do that. You are going to really lead not only our country, not only this nation, but I have found that really try to focus and meet your professional goals while serving the public good.
Thank you. Dean Penyaver.
The mighty, mighty Boss Tones have a line in one of their songs that I'm not a coward, I've just never been tested. And I think that, you know, these challenges that we're facing are really an opportunity to excel, you know, to rise to the occasion. And told the students at our orientation that, you know, the greatest generation is the greatest generation because of the hardships that they faced and overcame. And so this is really a moment when there's this opportunity to develop the skills that Dean Leslie was talking about and rise to the occasion and become, you know, truly excellent. And we need that hardship really to make that possible. So it is an opportunity, and we've been through hard times before and we've gotten through them, and we will get through these.
My mantra is to whom much is given, much is required. So I know that all of you are talented, you're smart, know that you're enough and that you can do it and you can be a positive change agent. So let's go forth, class of 2020, and all the rest of you students, because we are counting on you. It has indeed been my honor, my pleasure. I just love all of you. And I thank you so much for the time that you've given us this afternoon to help educate us and to inspire us. But I'm going to allow Dean Diller to have the last words because this was his brainchild, and I'm so thankful to him.
I'm not going to say much because I don't know how I add to what you just said and to that conclusion. I just want to thank all of my colleagues for all your incredible hard work, talent, brilliance, and dedication to your communities. I think all of your students and faculty are the better for it. The profession is the better for it. And what I would say to our students out there, by the way, is we need you. You know, our society needs you. Our communities need you. We are hungry and eager for your contributions, and can't wait for you to join us and to work with you. So take care, everyone. And President Boston, thank you for leading us through an incredible number of questions and topics in a really short amount of time. So you covered it.
Wow.
That's great.
Bless you. I appreciate all of you. All right. Take care, everybody. Stay healthy, stay well, and let's continue the good fight.